Hello friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad and today we're going to be discussing how we can actually implement background jobs inside our .NET application. We're going to be seeing how we can utilize a library that's going to make this easy for us outside of the box. We're going to be seeing different implementation for it, different types of background jobs that we can implement, and we're going to be understanding the full logic behind it of how it actually works within our .NET application. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It will really help the channel. As well, if you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. Now with that said, grab your cup of coffee and let's get started. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to actually understand how Hangfire works. And from there, we're going to be seeing the different implementation pattern that Hangfire provides. And then once we have covered all of that, we can actually start within the code. So just a quick summary, Hangfire is a way where we can actually run background services inside our .NET application without relying on any third-party services. If we're hosting it on Windows without relying on the Windows services in order for us to do that, all of the background services will actually be directly running from our application. It will create different threads within our application and it will dedicate those threads and those resources into the background services that we currently have. So that's a very nice way that Hangfire gives us this capability, because basically we don't have to worry about any third-party services, about any additional resources. Whenever the application starts up, those background services will start up with it. And that's going to be the main key area here. It's basically all of the implementation that we're going to be currently having is going to be directly linked to Hangfire and to our .NET application. So for example, if our .NET application stops, the background services will not work. So that's the only downside for it. So even if the application is not working, the Hangfire will not work, and vice versa. Whenever the application is working, all of the different background services will work. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. But other than that, Hangfire is a very fast, secure and free of charge to a certain extent when it comes to actually having background services. There's a lot of different capabilities that Hangfire give us for free, and there's two capabilities which we have to pay for. We're going to be delving into those details in a bit more once we start implementing. But other than that, I think Hangfire is a really good way to start actually creating background processes. Before we jump into the code, let me go back to the drawing board here so we can understand how this works. So basically right now what we want to imagine is all of this is currently happening within our application. So this is our .NET application. And the reason here I chose the keyword client and server, and it's basically just a way where we can actually have logic separation inside our what we're referring to inside the .NET Core application. So this is our application, and inside this application we have installed our Hangfire libraries. So once we install the Hangfire library, what will Hangfire actually do inside our application? Well, Hangfire is going to create a client and it's going to create a server, and these are basically instances that we're going to be running whenever our .NET application is running. We don't have to really worry about how do they work, how do they run. Everything is automatically configured within Hangfire. Once we add it to our program.cs, it will take care of managing all of that. The only thing we need to provide is a storage location. So if we're utilizing SQL Server, we need to give it a SQL Server database. If we're using SQLite, Postgres, we need to give it those query string in order for it to connect to. But basically Hangfire will utilize a database to store all of the jobs that it needs to do. So for example, let's say I want to run an email service which run after 3 hours after a user register, for example, like I send them a welcome email and all of the setup stuff. We can allocate that, and the way where Hangfire stores this information inside a database, and once the time allocates, Hangfire will pick up that job and execute it. So the main thing that we need to provide to Hangfire once we are setting up is going to be the connection string for a database. This could be our own database that we are using, or the better approach is to have a dedicated database for Hangfire, because basically once we have a dedicated database for Hangfire, it will directly know that they have separation of concerns. So in case for any reason we want to completely scrap that database and rebuild it, we can do that. We want to back up specifically those jobs and basically restore them later on, we can do that. We don't really have to worry about it conflicting with our own data. So that's something really important to keep in mind. It will really be helpful if we can have two databases, one for the application and one specifically for Hangfire. But again, if you don't have that, you can integrate it directly with your application and it will work. So let us understand the process flow. So again, all of these are running within our .NET application. So basically, whenever we set up a job, we're basically utilizing the Hangfire client. We're telling it, please, we want to create some kind of a jobs. And there's different types of jobs we're going to be discussing a bit after that. So once we decided to create a job, what will Hangfire do? It will store it inside its database saying, I need to execute this types of job. And then what it will do, it will return to us a confirmation that this job has been created. And that's it. That's the only role that the client will have. It's only responsible for taking any jobs that we want to do from our side. So once we have done that, the second part is the Hangfire server. And here the Hangfire server, its main responsibility is to actually keep scanning this database, keep actually looking at the information there and see whatever job that needs to be executed and then execute them. So it will actually go into the database, do a scan if every second or every something around those lines, check, do I need to execute anything right now? If it does, it will take that job and it will execute it. And then once it's finished, it will fetch another job and another job and another job. So as we can see here, that the first step is for us to create the job, and then it will give us back the confirmation, and then it will perform the background job which is pulled up from this database. And once it does, it will actually fetch another one and another one. So all of this is running in the background inside our .NET application. We don't have to worry about it, but it's really important for us to understand the background and how it does it work before we can actually start implementing, because if something goes wrong, it's really important for us to actually understand where it potentially going wrong in order for us to resolve it. So once we have covered that, now we want to understand what can we do with the free version that Hangfire provide, and what are the ones that we need to pay for. So they are separated into two, free and paid. So the free ones, as you can see, is much more than the paid one, and you can see it's pretty much almost what you ever need to do. So the first one is fire and forget jobs. So it's something like you want to send an email. So after a user register, for example, you want to send them a welcome email, you can use fire and forget because you're not really waiting on anything from them. So you just initiate it and Hangfire will take care of the rest. The second one is delayed jobs. So you want to say, for example, after someone upload their profile picture, within the next 5 minutes you want to create a thumbnail of that picture. So that's a delayed job. You don't want to do it directly because the user could have been still updating their profile or for any reason. So the delayed job is basically after that has been after a certain amount of time, that job will be picked up. So you trigger it after a certain amount of time. The recurring job, say, is, for example, every day around midnight, I want to do a cleanup on my database. So every day at that time, it will, for example, run and it will execute that job. And that's a recurring job because we can specify the cron time frame for it. And once we specify the cron time frame for it, it will automatically keep on executing and executing until it's actually manually stop it. And lastly, it's a continuous jobs. Continuous jobs means that we have one job attached to another. So for example, let's say we have a user who have uploaded their profile pictures. Once we have uploaded their profile picture, first of all, we can create a thumbnail. Once we create a thumbnail, we want to copy it to a different storage location. Then we want to, for example, upload it to our cache, so on and so forth. So all of these different steps, what we can do them is a continuous jobs because we don't want the main thread of our application doing that. We want some kind of background jobs executing all of this for us. So that's where Hangfire comes into place. We can have this there in order for us to actually execute all of these different requirements in a continuous way, and we can attach jobs to one another. So only upon successful of one job, we can execute another, and that's the main thing within continuous jobs. And as for the paid one, is basically batch jobs. It will allow us to execute multiple jobs simultaneously, and that's basically self-defined here. And batch continuous, it will actually continue on the continuous, but again, it will actually be a batch continuous. So instead of running one continuous action, we can run 3, 4, 5 continuous actions, as many as we need. So that's going to be the main thing. And within this video, we're going to be focusing on the free one. I don't have a paid license unless Hangfire wants to sponsor me. We can go through it, but we're going to be focusing on the main jobs, and we're going to see how actually we can implement them within our .NET application. So now that we have actually covered what Hangfire does and why we might need it and the main implementation of it, let's jump back to our source code. And basically what I'm using here is I'm using the application that we have created previously, which is the base application, which contain a default connection strings. It contain some controllers, etc., etc. It contain a DB context, which is available for us. So instead of redoing the work every single time, we're just using this base application. If you're interested in learning how we build this, I have a video which I'm going to link it here somewhere on the description down below, where you can actually watch it in full, and basically you'll have the exact same version of the application as I do right here. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be starting by installing some packages, and those packages are going to be crucial for Hangfire in order for us to utilize it. So the first package is going to be .NET add package Hangfire. Oops, we need to navigate to the application, so I always forget. And then let's install the package. Perfect. Let's clear this up right now. Then what I want to do, I want to install another package. So .NET add package hangfire.core. Perfect. Another package has been installed. Now we want to, because we want to utilize, if we go back here, we want to utilize a storage, and because I'm using SQLite, I want to install the package for SQLite. If you're using SQL Server, you install the package for SQL Server, for Postgres, etc., etc. So for now, right here, I'm gonna install the SQLite. So I'm gonna be, let's clear it up. .NET add package hangfire.storage.SQLite. Oops, Hangfire dot. Oops, here we have a typo. Perfect. And then I need to install again. Let's clear this up. .NET add package, and this is gonna be Hangfire dot dashboard dot basic dot authentication. And because Hangfire is such a powerful tool, we're actually able to have full dashboard capabilities for us, and we'll actually have the capability to add authentication mechanism to it. So that way we're only us would be able to manage these jobs, see what's going on, and basically try to identify if there's anything going wrong. And all of that is out of the box provided by Hangfire. We don't really have to do any extra work. And we're going to be exploring how we can set up these dashboards later on. So now that we have done this, the next step is going to go to our connection string, and inside my connection string I'm going to add a new connection string. I'm going to call it Hangfire connection, and I'm just going to call it Hangfire DB. And here what I'm doing is, because basically I'm using SQLite, I don't really have to worry about having a different utilizing the same data source, because it's on my local machine. I can create as many databases that I want. So for this reason, I'm just utilizing a different database to store the Hangfire tables in it. And once we created those Hangfire tables, we're gonna actually able to see what's gonna be inside of them. So once I created my connection string, the next step that I want to do is I want to specify the level of information inside the logs for Hangfire. So I'm just gonna add here Hangfire, and I'm gonna add the level for it as information as well. Perfect. So now that I have done that, all I'm gonna do right now is go to my program.cs and basically notify my application that I'm gonna be utilizing Hangfire, and add all of the required configuration to it. So before I do any build, so I'll have to add it here. I need to add, actually first of all, let us get the connection string for our Hangfire. So we already have here a section to get connection string. So I'm gonna put var Hangfire connection string equal builder dot configuration dot get connection string. And then what did I call this connection string? Hangfire connection, very creative. And now I want to utilize this connection string here. So before I do any build, I want to add it here. I'm gonna put builder dot services dot add Hangfire. And then from here, what I want to do, I want to specify the configuration. Actually, let's just make it config easier. Okay, so let's add it here. So I'm gonna put set data compatibility level, and I'm gonna put compatibility level to 180. And here, if we take a look at this, this is basically gonna allow us to see how many data that we want to utilize, the different compatibility that we want. There's a big section inside the Hangfire website where it's actually go through different compatibilities. I'm not gonna delve into this right now, but a general rule of thumb, use the 180 because it's the most versatile one. But again, for more information about this, check the Hangfire website to check the different compatibility levels. So once we have set the compatibility levels, now I want to utilize the use simple assembly name serial type serializer, and this is basically, it will allow us to actually scan all of the assemblies inside our application in order for it to actually find the right jobs, because the jobs that we're going to be utilizing, they're going to be injected to it as a dependency injection. So it's really good for it to actually know what type of assembly exists inside our application. So it will scan those assemblies and figure out the jobs from there, and then actually inject them inside its own DI container, so it will be able to execute them. I'm going to put use recommended serialization settings. And lastly, I want to tell it that it needs to use the SQLite. Actually, I'm going to tell it to use the SQLite storage. And here I need to specify the connection string. So I'm going to put Hangfire connection string. And that's the first part of the configuration. So let us just do .NET build quickly to make sure everything is building. So now, if you take a look at here, what I did is I configured the Hangfire client. Basically, I'm telling the Hangfire client it needs to be compatible, it needs to be able to scan all the different assemblies, use the recommended serialization settings, and for it to be running, it needs to actually use the connection string. Now what I want to do is I want to specify the Hangfire server. Again, it's all based on this architecture. So now we have configured the client inside our application, so it will run automatic when the application runs. Now we want to configure the server, so it will automatically run whenever our application runs as well. And this is also going to be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to put builder services, add Hangfire server, and that's going to be it. We're not going to be delving into more details for the server because most of the configuration that we have done here is already available on the client side. So these are going to be the main current configuration. There's going to be more, but this is going to be the main thing right now. And once we have done that, the next is I want to actually enable it. So let's go here and let me remove this. I don't need HTTPS right now. So the first thing that I need to do here is I need to add the following: app.use Hangfire dashboard. And I'm going to specify the endpoint for it. I'm just going to say / Hangfire. We're going to be seeing all of that in action. And then actually this one, it will not be here. This one, it will be inside the app.map Hangfire dashboard. Yeah. And let's put this as / Hangfire. And lastly, what I want to do is I want to create some kind of background job so we can just actually see it running. And this is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to put recurring job dot add or update, and let's utilize a lambda function. I'm gonna put just console dot write line. I'm gonna say here hello from Hangfire, and here it's gonna ask us for a cron job. Let me just copy one cron job here so it will directly be available for us. And now, as you can see, Hangfire will take here cron expression, because basically what we're doing is we're just adding a fire and forget cron job. And once we have done this, now let's run our application. And as you can see, as soon as we have run our application, there's a lot of configuration which is happening. And you can see here Hangfire server is connected. It's starting to register all of the different services. It started to utilize the SQL server, SQLite storage, and all of the different implementation there. And if we take a look here on the left hand side, we can see here that now we have a new database called Hangfire DB. And now let's give it a few seconds, and we're going to be able to see hello from Hangfire automatically popping up here. While we're doing with that, let's check this Hangfire DB. Let's check the connection. It's connected. Let's open it up. And let me open it here. And first of all, we can see that the background job has started running. Hello from Hangfire. I did not do anything. It automatically ran by itself. And now here, let me just open the main, open the tables, and we can see that these are all of the tables that Hangfire will need to utilize in order for it to run. It all manages by itself. It did not create any of this. As soon as I provide the connections thing, it automatically generated. And if I want to take a look at the job, so let me open it. Oops. Let me open it up. And we can see here that this is the job that has actually run. Hello from Hangfire. We can see created ad and the expiring ad. And if we open this, we can see the actual argument which has been passed to it. And we can see the actual invocation data, which is here. It was more of a console.log, and we can see the status of it succeeded. So now once a new one will execute, it will automatically run again and again, and basically it will record it more and more here. So in essence, all of this has been automatically managed. So now we can see it automatically added another one for us. So if I click on refresh, we can see that there's another job that's automatically added into our table in order for us to be able to monitor it from there. So that's one level of it. If we remember here inside my program.cs, I have added a /Hangfire. So let's see what this will give us inside our application. So now if I go to my browser and put localhost 5000 and I put /Hangfire, we can see that I have a dashboard which is automatically running. And inside this dashboard, I can see the recurring jobs that's going to happen. If I look at it, I can see here that it has been executed successfully in a few seconds. A few seconds ago, it has been created 3 seconds ago. This is the cron job that's basing on. And if I look here, we can see that different information about the job that has been succeeded. If I click on it, we can see different data. We can see where it's been executed, so on and so forth. And we can see the actual execution code that we have. And all of that, if you notice, I have not done anything. I can see here the jobs that I have. I can see that it is in queue right now to execute again. We can see the ID for it, etc., etc. And all of that has been automatically provided for me out of the box without me actually needing to do anything. And that's the really power of Hangfire, the usability and easeability to manage all of these background jobs out of the box. So now that we have done this and we have explored a bit the dashboard, let us stop our application and let's take it as a step a bit further and start create some kind of a background services. So what I want to do here is I want to add a new project, and I'm gonna call this project, let's call it formula1.services. Yeah, we can call it whatever we want. And basically here, I'm just gonna create any random services. So I'm just gonna delete this. I'm gonna create a new directory and I'm gonna call this, let's see, email services, for example, email. And inside this email, again, you're gonna have a much better structure for your service, but this is again all for the demo. I'm just gonna create interface. Here, all I'm gonna do is, for example, create an interface. I'm gonna say email service, email service. And the only thing we're gonna have here is void send welcome email, for example. And it's gonna take a string as name. We're not gonna be building those services. We're just gonna be mimicking an actual email service. We're not going to be really sending. And I'm going to use another one, void send getting started email, again string email. And here I'm going to put email and name. Let's close this, don't really need it. And similarly here I need to put an email. What else can I say? Okay, let us add something when a driver has been added. So we have added them, like I will send them a welcome email, send them a getting started email. Let's send them something, for example, after another service, it's after they score, for example, certain points, or let's just keep with the registration. Let us create a merge for them. So I'm gonna add a new interface. I'm gonna call it merge service, like new merchandise for them, like clothing, etc., etc. It's gonna be an interface, and I'm just gonna put void create merge, and I'm gonna take here driver ID. Yeah, that should be it. Should we create another one? Okay, let's put another one, void remove merge. Let's say, for example, after a driver has stopped driving or it has been deleted. So again, go with driver ID. Okay, so now that we have these different interfaces and services, now let's just create a quick implementation. Again, they're gonna be pretty straightforward. So I created everything in a single file. That's fine. Let's just move it here. Let's just rename this to general. And let's just update this. Again, this is not a good name by any mean, but just some things that we can utilize. And here I'm gonna just create an implementation. So the first one is gonna be for the email service. Yeah, I'm just gonna inherit from the email service. It's gonna annoy us because we don't implement the missing members, so we're gonna implement them now. And all I'm gonna be doing here, pretty straightforward. I'm gonna say console.writeLine. I'm gonna use string concatenation. I'm gonna say this will send an email to, now let's use the name, and using the following email, and we need to pass the email. Okay, send a welcome email. Okay, and then let's copy this, put it here, and instead of a welcome email, we're gonna put a getting started email. Okay, that's basically the implementation for the email service. Now let's create one for the merge. So add new one. I'm gonna put merge service, and again I'm gonna inherit from the merge service. It's gonna complain because we didn't implement them, so let's implement them now. And here all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say this will create merge for the driver. Let's put the ID, driver ID, and here let's copy this. Let's remove this. And here I'm gonna say this will remove merge for the driver. Okay, perfect. So now I'm gonna go back to my terminal, and I'm gonna go back to my library, Formula 1 service. And I'm just gonna put .NET build. Okay, perfect. Build succeeded. Everything is running as it should be. So now what I want to do here is I want to inject these services inside my program.cs. So I'm gonna come back here. I'm gonna inject them also as scoped. So we're gonna put builder.services.add scoped. And I'm gonna use the first one, which is gonna be the email service. And it's gonna be email service. And the nice thing about Rider is we're gonna figure out this dependency and add the project dependencies. So oops, everything now works. And here for the email as well. Perfect. Oops. And now we need to add the other one for the merge. So it's gonna be iMerge service and merge service. Great. So now that we have these services directly available for us, again, these are all dummy services. all we're doing is just basically putting stuff inside the console just so we can see the different implementation. But again, by no means this is our like fully functional service, it's only for the demo. So let's add one more service. Just thought about this. Let's add something called a maintenance service. So maintenance service, and this is going to be an interface. So interface, and this is going to be just void sync records. So here we're going to be mimicking that at midnight, for example, we need to do some kind of a backup or syncing our records between different databases, so on and so forth. Again, just something that we can see where a background service might come into place. And I'm just going to do a quick implementation of this. So add maintenance service. I'm going to inherit from maintenance and implement the missing member. And all I'm going to say here, console.writeLine. This is a sync, or we can say the sync has started or something like that. We're not going to do into a full sync mechanism now, but you get the idea. So now I'm just going to update my program.cs again. I'm going to put here maintenance and maintenance service. So now let us see how we can actually inject these. So the first thing is I want to remove this ad hoc cron job that I added. We don't really need it. And I'm going to go back to my controllers, and I want to go to my drivers controller. And inside my drivers controller, what I want to do is whenever I add a new driver, I want us to basically run this background service where it actually sends a welcome email. So let's see how we can do that. It's going to be pretty straightforward. So before we get started implementing inside our controller, what we're going to be doing is we're going to look into the diagram that we had at first, which is going to be this one here. And we're going to be seeing the different types of implementation that we can utilize currently inside our application. So we're going to start by fire and forget. And this is a very good scenario in order for us to, for example, send emails. If we wanted us to send a welcome message to the user, say, or to the driver in this case, saying like welcome to the application, etc., etc. So let us see how we can implement this. So this is going to be the first one. I'm going to change the color for it to purple. And let's go back to our rider here. And if we go down, instead of having get a driver, let's close this. So here, whenever we're adding a driver, we need to add the background service here. And first of all, we need to get a job ID, because that's gonna be what's gonna be returned to us. And then we're gonna utilize the background jobs. And here, basically, the background job, if we hover over it, we can see it's actually getting it from Hangfire, and which means that it's a background job assembly that we're gonna be using. We're not using the default one that dotnet provides. So once that's done, then I'm gonna put dot, and here you can see that these are the different options that we currently have. We can schedule, enqueue, and schedule. So the one we're gonna be using right now is enqueue. And then here what I want to do is I want to specify the service that I want to utilize. And for sending emails, we have an interface called email service. And then once I have specified the service that I want to utilize, then I need to specify what is the method inside the service that I want to use. And in this case, I want to send welcome email. And for the send welcome email, let's put this on a new line so we can see it. So for the send welcome email, it's going to require us to pass the email and the name. So I don't think the drivers right now on the DTO has an email, so I'm just going to put a random email. And for the name, we're going to utilize it from the driver DTO. So let's use string concatenation. Okay, perfect. So now that we have this, let us close it here. And all I'm going to do right now is just print out the ID to make sure that this is running. So I'm just going to put console.writeLine. And here I'm just going to put the job ID. Perfect. So now that we have this, let us run the application. Perfect, build succeeded. And then all I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna go back to my web browser. Here I have my Swagger interface. So I'm just gonna go to my post request. I'm gonna create a new driver. So I'm gonna put Alex Albon, driver number 23, and let's say year of birth is 2000. Yeah, let's put this as a date of birth. So now I should be receiving, so right now if I take a look at the logs, we can see here that I don't have anything running. I don't have my job ID, and if we go to the Hangfire jobs, we can see here that currently I don't have any jobs up and running. So we don't have any jobs even here running. But when I click on execute, first of all, we got a 201, which means the driver has been created. If I go back here, we can see that I have one scheduled task that needs to execute on the queue, one job. So here I can even see what it is. So if I click on it, I can see where it's being executed and what's the value. And we can see here as well the worker that's going to be picking it up. And if I go back to my code editor here, I can see that the message has been created, which is going to be this will send a welcome email to Alex Album using the following email. And here I can see the job ID. And on top of all of that, if I go back, this is not a recurring job, but if I go back here, now we can see it has completed. And if I click on succeeded here, we can see that it has been completed successfully, and we can see the job ID, which is 84, matches the job ID that we have gotten here. So in this case, we were able to actually execute a fire and forget implementation of our job. So that's going to be the first one. So let's make sure this is implemented, fire and forget. Perfect. So now the other one, what I want to do is, I want to do it inside the update functionality. So what happens here is inside, whenever I'm doing an update, let's say I updated the driver and I want like a job which runs in like a 30 minutes later, which is going to synchronize all of my databases because I have updated one in this theoretical scenario. How can I actually achieve that? It's going to be pretty straightforward. To do this, we're going to be utilizing the same thing as we have used inside the create. So we need to tap into the background services. So for let me get the job ID so we can match that. And then I'm going to put background services, and then I'm going to utilize the schedule because I want it to run in a deferred time, which is going to be 30 minutes. And I'm going to utilize the maintenance service because, as we said, it's going to be like a database update, so on and so forth. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to utilize the sync records capabilities there. And now what I want to do is I want to tell it when it should run. So I'm just going to utilize for this a time span. And I'm going to say add, actually from seconds. We can make it, let's say, for 30 minutes, but to make it easier, I'm just going to put in 20 seconds. And let me just put this on a new line so we can see it. And here all I'm going to do is just a simple console.writeLine, and I'm going to print the job ID. And let's go back to the diagram. Let's convert this to purple to make sure that we have covered it. So now that we have this, let's run our application. And inside here, what I want to do is I want to update my drivers. So I'm just gonna get all drivers for now, try it out, execute. And as we can see here, I got all of the drivers. So I'm just gonna update my driver information. So if we go back here to put, try out, let's take the driver ID. And let's put it here. So first name, I'm just gonna put gonna put L, and driver number, I'm gonna put it, let's say 023, and date of birth, I'm just gonna put it let's say 19, let's say 75. Execute. Driver field is required, let's see. So we got a 204, and now if I go back to rider, As you can see here, I got the 104 number, which is gonna be for my background job that I'm running here, which should run after 20 seconds. And if I go back to my web browser and I go here, if I go to jobs, scheduled jobs, it already has in 20 seconds. But as you can see here, that this was a scheduled job, which is basically run for the sync records, and now it's actually running. So if I refresh now, it should be still running. And you can see here the ID, which actually matches the number that we have from here. And then we can see that the sync has started after 20 seconds. And now that has been finished. We can go to succeeded, and now we can see it here. And if we click on it, we can see that it lives here with all of the information that it has, that it needs. And we can see that it actually completed successfully. Perfect. So now that we have covered these, now let's go back to my diagram. So now that we have done this, the delayed jobs, now let's see how we can create a continuous job, or basically a recurring job actually. So what I want to do is, back inside my controller, I'm going to stop this. What I want to do is, when I do delete something, I want to have something run in the background, for example, to remove the person's merch. And I want it to run every day around the same time to check if there is anything that has been deleted in order for me to remove the merge. Again, this is all theoretical, you can use it anywhere, but this is where I want to implement it here. So here again, I'm going to do the same thing as we done before. So now for the recurring jobs, all I need to do is just, first of all, I want to put recurring jobs, because as we can see here from this diagram, it's going to be recurring, so we need to utilize the recurring library. And then from here I want to put add or update. Then I want to specify the interface or the service that I want to utilize, which is going to be iMerge. And then what I want to do here is I want to specify the actual service, which is going to be remove merge. It's going to take the driver ID. And then here what I want to do is I want to specify the frequency. So I want it to run every half an hour, for example, or every hour. So I'm going to put hourly. And this is it. Once I do now any delete, it will run this hourly. But just to make it simple for now, instead of hourly, let's make it a bit less, so minutely. And I'm gonna run my application now. Let's go back to my web browser. And whenever I do a delete, let's get a driver ID. So I want to remove Alex, for example. So we'll remove Alex. And go to the delete, try it out, put the driver ID, execute. We got the 204, and now if I go here, first of all we refresh. Okay, sorry, under recurring jobs, we can see that we have one recurring job that needs to execute, which is going to be the iMerge removal. And if we go here, we can see that has not executed yet, because we said it's going to execute every single minute. We need to wait 1 minute until it's execute. And right now everything else seems to be fine. Now we can see like there's a bit of a spike going on here, because it's actually gonna start picking this up soon. What I can do as well, I can click on something and click trigger now, which basically means that it's gonna trigger this functionality directly, but I don't want to do that. I just want to wait for it until it actually triggers it. This is basically the servers. We don't really need to worry about this right now. And here directly I can see that a jobs is actually running. One of them is going to be the console write line that we have executed at first. The other one, which I had just added, which is going to be the remove merge. And if I click on it, we can see it's actually knows where is it coming from, how is it being activated, and what is the driver ID that it needs to take. And then basically after a while we can see it completed successfully. And if I click on succeeded, we can see the iMerge has been completed successfully, and I got the succeeded mark. And all of this right now is basically allowing me to execute those different functionalities that currently exist. So I have already tried fire and forget delayed job and recurring jobs. For simplicity's sake, I'm not gonna go delve into continuous jobs, and because I don't have a paid version, I will not gonna be able to do batch or batch continuous. But if you're interested in having continuous job, please let me know. I'll make sure to create a short video about it and make sure that I'm covering it. So there was one last functionality that I would like us to cover before we finish this video, and this is gonna be how we can actually secure our dashboard. So I'm gonna go back to my program.cs. Okay, so we want to do right now is we want to introduce a username and a password for our dashboard, so nobody will be able to access it without permission. So whenever our application was running, as soon as we went to that path, which is going to be in this case localhost/Hangfire, we will be able to directly see the dashboard. Now we want to secure it, and the way we do that is we we want to update this where it says map Hangfire dashboard. I'm gonna put here new dashboard options, and then here what I want to specify is we can specify the title if I want. Dashboard title, I'm just gonna call it Formula 1 Services dash. And then here, which is the important part, authorization. I want to specify authorization section, and then I'm gonna put here the main authorization options, which is gonna be new Hangfire custom authorization filter. And then here, when I initialize this, it's gonna ask me for my password. Again, I'm gonna make it simple as pass, and for my user, I'm just gonna put it as Mohamad. And by simply adding those configuration here, the Hangfire pass and username, I'm able to actually authenticate. So now this is all I need to do in order for me to secure my dashboard. Basically right now within my username and password, whenever I go to it, it will be able to run successfully. So now let's do a quick recap of what we have covered today inside this video. The main items that we have covered today is how does Hangfire work. So if we go back here to our dashboard, to our drawing, we are able to actually understand how a client, server, and Hangfire storage work together, how this all live inside our .NET Core application. We then discussed the different types of Hangfire jobs that currently exist. We have even implemented 3 of them inside our application, and we discussed the rest. And then we saw how we can actually secure our dashboard by actually providing it with a username and a password. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below. If you have any clarification, or if you'd like me to cover something in more detail, please also let me know. I hope you like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. It will really help the channel as well. If you'd like to support me, please consider supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. With that said, have a great day, and thank you very much for watching.